Well, hi everyone, and welcome to our webinar today, Profiles in Small-Scale Processing, featuring Blue Ridge Meats. We're very excited to be here today with Lois. Really glad that she was able to take the time to join us today. My name is Lauren Gwynn. I'm the director of the Niche Meat Processor Assistance Network. I'm based here at Oregon State University, and I'm your host today, and along with our program manager, Catherine Quambeck. So MPAN, if you don't know us, we do webinars on topics related to small-scale meat processing and farmers and ranchers who raise meat for local and other niche markets. If you would like to be on our email list to learn about webinars and other resources, you can sign up at our website, which is www.nichemeatprocessing.org. We'll put that in the chat box. And if you have webinar topic suggestions, you can email Catherine or me, and we'll also put our addresses up there. Thank you, Catherine. So just briefly about MPAN, we are a network of processors, farmers and ranchers, universities, public agencies, nonprofits, and others who have the shared mission to support small and very small meat processors because they are essential partners in bringing local sustainable meat and poultry to market. We are also part of E-Extension, which is an initiative of the National Land Grant University System. So 3 things before we get started. There will be time for questions both during and after the presentations, to ask a question. Please type it into this chat box on the left-hand side of the screen. We are recording the webinar. We will post it on the MPAN website for later viewing with the presentation slides. And we will get to as many questions as possible today, but if your question doesn't get answered, please feel free to email me after the webinar and we'll try to get it answered. So, moving on, what are we doing today? Well, we are hearing from a successful small-scale processor. What makes a small-scale processing plant successful? That's our big question. We know it's really hard work, but we get asked that question on a regular basis by MPAN members and many others. People really want to hear from operators who are finding ways to make it work, finding creative and innovative approaches to tackle all the difficult challenges of making a small-scale plant profitable. So on this webinar, we're going to get a behind-the-scenes peek at Blue Ridge Meats, which is a small USDA-inspected slaughter and processing facility in Front Royal, Virginia. Our speaker today, Lois Ailstock, who is the Vice President of Blue Ridge Meats, will describe how they manage their day-to-day operations, getting and keeping customers, bookkeeping, employee management, and more. She will tell us about systems they've developed, what's worked, what hasn't, and this is a really big one, what she wishes she knew before they got started. And I would like to say that minutes before joining us in this webinar this morning, Lois was answering questions on our listserv, helping people out. So we really appreciate her being part of our network. So, Lois.
Hello, everybody. Thank you all for having me today. I was trying to help out with a topic that has actually been quite confrontational and a lot of controversy with nitrates, no nitrates in bacons, but we can touch on that later. Basically, a lot of what we need to talk about is there's so much to talk about. It's going to be hard to answer everybody's questions, but I'll try to do what I can. The reason why that we opened our business is because we were farmers. We used to have about 250 head of sheep, and we got to the point where we were getting so many demands of our own products. Those are some of my sheep there on the left. On the right was a friend who sent me a picture, which is extremely one of my favorite pictures. But we started out as wild game. And just to give you guys a little background, we're about 60 miles outside of Washington, D.C. Our first plant, which was non-inspected custom, we did about 2,000 to 3,000 head of wild game in a 4-month period of time. We're right across the street from the Washington Redskin football park, FBI, CIA, very, very vast, a lot of income, and we did a lot of business right there, 6 miles outside of Dulles Airport. But that county had a no slaughter law. There are no slaughterhouses permitted in Loudoun County in Virginia. We are now in Warren County because it was the only facility that we could find. But I wanted to do this because we had people coming in. My husband's been a butcher since he was 14. And these folks said, I can't get good meat. What can I do? And we found out that legally we could not sell the products that we would be able to slaughter there at that custom facility. So we decided, hey, why not? You're a butcher. I have marketing skills. Let's see what we can do. We already have the following. We have the farmers coming. Let's find a facility. Virtually impossible. We started looking in 2005. By this time, we had already had a small child. So we were actively looking. And we wanted really just to have good, wholesome, clean, fresh food to folks. And that's kind of how it all started. And I'm not going to lie, the whole idea of being your own business owner and being able to control your product was probably overwhelming. The romanticizing of now, which I've seen it come full circle, is there's a lot of romance to this, getting back to the grassroots, getting back to old days. And I think that is probably the first falsehood that I warn people about, is it's not as glamorous as you would once think, being able to control your product. The slaughter floor clearly is not glamorous at all. So my objective was that Doug had all the butchering skills. My husband is Doug, and he was the butcher. He'd always been the butcher. He did a lot of charcuterie, did a lot of smoked products. And I said, okay, well, I can sell anything. I can market us, and we can make this happen. And this way, I could do what I wanted to do, where I was part of Hunters for the Hungry, where we were giving back to food banks with the excess deer. And I really enjoyed that part of it. And I said, maybe we can really put a good product out to get good, fresh, clean food out to folks. And I was like, okay, I'm a vegetarian. I'm not going to eat the meat. I'm not going to raise my sheep. We're not going to kill them. We are just going to sell them to people for breeding stock, and then we'll go from there. Well, 200 sheep gets very big very quickly. So we ended up having a lot of sheep, and I said, okay, well, we got to do something. And it just came full circle, and I told Doug, I said, okay, we'll get this plant, we'll work it out. I'm not going to be there on kill days because it's terrible. I don't want to see that. I don't want to see this mess. I don't want to put animals to death. And it's very unfortunate that that's a decision that we do make. And especially being a vegetarian, and I was from the city, Doug's more country. But I said, you know what, I can sell this, we can do this. I can make a difference by giving back good, fresh, clean food, helping folks. Okay, I'll do it. And of course, once you get started, it doesn't end up being that way. I am here 5-6 days a week. I am now on the kill floor all the time. I am part of the kill floor. I go back and I looked at items being condemned. We look at carcasses because your customers want to know how much fat is on my carcass. What does it look like? Did you think my meat looked okay? Not to mention the humane part was crucial. That was my most important thing, was being humane. And we implemented a lot of things from Dr. Granlund out of Colorado State University. I took my staff to have her do a presentation. We really wanted to make the slaughterhouse not be your typical slaughterhouse that you read about. We wanted to really make folks understand that it doesn't have to be bloody, dirty, ugly, and a bad experience. We really, really wanted it to be positive. So we noticed that there was a lot of women farmers. We noticed there was a lot of women coming into play. So when you came to our plant, it doesn't look like a slaughterhouse on the outside. And when you come in, it's decorated. It looks like a store. And then behind, we have doors where you can see inside and windows, but we just wanted to make the big difference. And we really had this great idea that this was really going to be a great thing. It is a small scale plant. As you can see, we only do 30 to 40, 50 head a week. We kill anywhere from 2 to 3 days a week, coming out of a very, very heavy winter and a horrible, horrible weather. The first quarter, we're down to 1 day a week right now, but it's all day long. That way we can process 5 days, the other 4 days a week. And we do the full slaughtering, we cut, wrap, and we do value added. We do bacon, hams, we do sausages. My husband makes 26 different kinds of varieties of fresh pork sausage, 5 fresh lamb sausage, and then of course we offer summer sausage for beef, bratwurst, bologna, and patties, those kind of things. We had a small retail store until beef prices escalated. So we've kind of scaled back a little bit, and now we're doing more of pairing farmers with the consumers. Because the consumers nowadays really want to know where their food's coming from. They want to trust you. They want to know what you're doing. And so we've kind of said to folks, you know, let's try to pair you up with what you're looking for to fit your budget. I think looking back, I might not have done the retail counter, only because of our location. Because of the overhead is so high, very high. If you're going to keep your integrity, if you're going to get box meat in, that's a different story. And that's what a lot of the up and coming, we see these butcher shops everywhere, especially in Washington, D.C., right outside Virginia, Maryland. It is the latest and greatest pop-up business. Everybody wants to own a slaughterhouse, or everybody wants to own a butcher shop. And it really is unfortunate, because a lot of people are going into this not really knowing what it takes, because the USDA wants to know what you're doing. When we first started, I initially had no idea the difference between state inspection and all federal inspection.
Lois, hold on 1 second, because I want to make sure there's so much that we want to share, and
okay.
You are going to get to inspection options. Is there anything more? You had covered that it's a Temple Grandin design. Is there any more that you want to share about the facility itself, or are you ready to tell us about inspection?
That's right. We can do facility. It is small. It is old. We can hold 80 head full side carcasses in our dry aging room, which is great about our plant. That was an upgrade that we did, along with electrical upgrades. The plant was built in 1967. I have no problem telling you I was born in 1966, so it's an old plant. I'm an old lady. So it was built by a family, and they did all local. And they were custom for a while, and then ended up going into inspection. The facility is probably the biggest factor. You're constantly upgrading, you're constantly repairing, you're constantly dealing with the old facility. It's a great facility. It works for us. But we do constantly, we put a new roof on last year. It's about $10,000. And we're constantly updating. And it must be very challenging. Yes. So that's a lot of the things about the plant. Day-to-day operations are fine. It really is, based on your facility and knowing what you have to work with. And if you are going to go into a slaughter facility and you want to just look around for areas where it's easy to move the animals around from everywhere in the plant. Our kill floor, we're all on a rail system. Everything is movable by rails, my entire plant. A lot of places that I've been in don't have a full rail system, a high rail. We're way high ceilings. And the half carcasses, a lot of places don't have that. They have very short ceilings where they can only do small carcasses and have to break them down, which causes a lot more labor. And probably the rest of the facility, we have freezers. The electric bills, of course, are high. Everybody knows that. Kill floor is very big. We have the dry aging room, the processing room. We have our administrative offices upstairs that we built, and the small retail room.
Great, thanks. So you were going to cover today, I mean, this is so much great information, inspection and then finances and customer service, staff, labeling, and the if I only knew piece. Get us started with the inspection options.
Okay, so for inspection, if I could go back, I would have done my research. We are in Virginia, so we were 50%, we were told 50% by the state paid, and then of course 50% by the federal government. We never saw the feds except for an FSIS review. And so we had, for those of you who don't know, we had Virginia state inspectors only that were regulated by Virginia state who upheld the rules from the USDA. If I could go back, I would have cut the state out and went full federal, because ultimately the federal government, the USDA, oversee Virginia Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. We had no idea that we even had an option. So I would tell folks to do your homework. Make sure if you are going to do federal, that you want to be able to cross state lines, that you really do your homework.
When did you go USDA? Because that's where you are now.
A month ago.
Wow. Okay, so you've been state all this time.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
And we bought this facility in September of 2006.
Great. Tell us.
Long time.
Yes.
Lesson learned. That would be my number one lesson to anybody out there today. Make sure you know who's policing you.
So what about finances? Tell us about that. How does that work for you?
Okay. Well, in the beginning, it was Doug and I. We had taken all of our savings from our past business, and we bought our building free and clear, and the land that it was on. So that way, if we failed, we always had the building that we could always re-rent or send it out to someone else. And then Blue Ridge Meats pays us rent. That way it's all kept separate. Day-to-day operations can be very, very, very costly, especially with the way the economy goes. We don't have a lot of vendors, but we do have vacuum bags. Vacuum bags are very expensive. Everybody wants vacuum pack now, so we have vacuum bags. Making sure you have good credit. Cash flow. A lot of times cash flow can be an issue, because if you have people and they come in and they see our dry aging room and they're like, oh, I want my beef to age 30 days. So if we don't have that money in 30 days, and we had 10 people that week, and we killed 10 beef that week, and we're not going to see that money for 30 days, that's something to take into consideration. A lot of people will ask you to age, or if they're getting pigs. We also do bacon and hams, and a lot of sausages. The fresh sausages are done right on the premises, but the bacon and hams, they take an additional 7 to 10 days from the time the pigs are cut. So again, that's another 3 to 4 weeks that you may not see that turnaround on the finance. So that's something definitely to take in consideration. So when we have our farmers who come in and they say, I need my pigs in 2 weeks for my farmer's market, then we can say to folks, okay, you need to make sure that you plan if you're going to get bacon and hams. We do our schedules 2 to 3 weeks in advance. Once we get the cut sheets, cutting instructions, and then we try to make sure that the customers are happy, but at the same time, we need to keep paying our staff. And salaries, our staff gets paid every week. So staff is very, very important, because first of all, these people are very hard to find. It's very, very difficult to find a butcher who can slaughter, process, and represent your country. I mean, represent your company in a positive way. I used to manage, I'm sure you saw back on the other slide, I was a makeup executive. I managed at one time 240 women, and they were easy compared to finding the quality that you need. My husband is a phenomenal butcher, but sadly, he's a little older now, and the wear and tear on his body is not the same. And he could cut 100 deer in a day. He could cut 100 lambs in a day. But now he's got carpal tunnel in his hands really bad from constant repetition of cutting. That's actually him right there on that slide, cutting a rib roast. So the thing is that most of your old world, which I call old world style butchers, are, I hate to say it, extinct. The average age of most of the old style butchers who actually can kill and process from primals, not out of a box, are 50s or 60s.
So Lois, let me ask you this question, because I know you were going to talk about staff a little bit later. Tell us how many people you have working for us full-time and how that varies, at the plant.
I have 5 full-time on the processing floor, and then I have an administrative assistant, and then my husband and I, and then we have some part-time butchers who are in their 50s, 60s, and 70s who are retired, who come in as needed.
Okay.
And all of my staff are cross-trained.
Say more about that.
Cross-training means I've got guys who can be on the kill floor on a Wednesday. They killed, 20 animals yesterday, including 3 scalded pigs within our regulated time. And today they're all down there processing beef, lamb, and pork.
Great.
And they also can do the bacon and hams. They can run the registers, and they can do cut sheets.
That's excellent. Do you, in terms of your finances, first of all, do you set particular production goals to make sure you meet your costs every day? How do you make sure that you're moving enough product to cover your costs?
Well, sadly, because 90% of our business is folks who are doing small hobby farms or large scale farms, maybe with 100 head at the most, 200 head. And most of these people are supplying small restaurants, farmers markets, on-farm stores. A lot of my customers have these new farm stores actually on their properties. So what they're doing is they're harvesting their animals, we're processing them, they're picking them up, and they're selling them. We have about 10 regular customers who help us pay our bills on a monthly basis.
Okay.
So sometimes that can be a little difficult because of the weather. This year, we were way behind on production. Way low on production, like 50%.
Right. Well, I guess and so that's the challenge of making sure that you've got enough throughput, and having those key customers is what keeps you guys in business month in, month out.
Right. And being very small processor, we don't have the luxury of having, like a credit manager or a lawyer or a HACCP. I saw one of the questions real quick where there was, do we have a HACCP coordinator? That's my husband. Because we had to pay $1,000 to have him trained.
Right.
And
well, he does that because you're too small of a plant. Right.
Yeah. So my husband is HACCP trained. He wrote the HACCP plan. Right.
And that makes sense for the size of your plant.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about customer service, because this is a big part of what you do, is trying to work with your folks.
We actually had a guy today call my husband and say, why should I have to spend 60 cents for you to make bulk sausage for me with your seasonings? We buy seasonings that are as close to wholesome, natural, quote unquote, organic, and I use that very loosely. We try to provide the very best quality that we can and provide the best service. And I think one of the biggest problems day to day that we find is the average consumer, the farmer, the rancher, is so confused. People do not understand legally how they need to be able to sell their meat at a farmer's market or to a restaurant. They don't understand that their animal has to walk into our plant on all 4 legs, and it cannot be a down animal. It cannot be hurt. It cannot have injuries. The inspectors are here every single day, 8 hours a day, monitoring every single action that we do from 7 a.m. till 3:30 every day. So if we tell the customers, I'm very sorry, we can't label it not for sale if you're selling this into open commerce, they seem to not understand, and we find ourselves educating and talking about labels and talking about cuts of meat depending on your region. I've heard so many, and I'm sure a lot of you have too, where what's a club steak? What's a pinwheel steak? A Delmonico compared to a ribeye. There are so many different names, and every time we turn around, there's some kind of marketing out there that the grocery stores are doing, or there's restaurant chains. Like I remember last year, the big thing was flat irons. There was like a mad rush on flat irons. No one ever heard of them before, and everybody wanted them. So we have to constantly educate. We used to do seminars. We used to do weekends. We used to do farm to fork. Doug would have a full seminar where he would take a whole half of beef, cut the whole thing, explain where everything came from, and then we would have our friends come in and cook all of the things we just cut, and we'd all talk and have like a powwow to discuss things that are going on between the farmers and the processors. And it was great. It was great. We're hoping to do more of those.
That sounds really valuable because then you all get on the same page, right?
Right, and it's really important that we try to help our customers, but it gets overwhelming because then we can't do our jobs. Because they want the butchers to come out and talk to them. And they want the butchers from their processing time, they want them to come out and say, can you tell me what I should do? How am I going to get the most yield? How long should I dry age? How long, should I, and then lately, how should we feed our grass-fed animal? We get that, at least once a day, I want to start grass-fed beef. What do you recommend I do? And I don't mean to be rude, but that's not my job.
Right. So there's a big piece of education there, and you're being looked to for expertise. I have a question about the cuts, this demand for all the different kinds of specialty cuts. Do you ever change your pricing based on, well, if you want this basic set of cuts, it costs you this much, but if you want all these fancy cuts, that's going to take us more time, so it costs you this much?
Correct. If you go to our website, you'll see our cut sheets. We have what we call the basic, old school, bone-in, very simple. What we'll do is, and this is kind of our philosophy here, we like to call ourselves the Nordstroms of meat processors. And we will do whatever you want us to do within the law, depending on your budget. If you have a very minimal budget, we'll guide you and we'll tell you what to do within your budget. And if you want all the extra added value, like burger patties, bratwurst, minute steaks, kebabs, stew meat, we do stuff called an English roast. We do silver tips and honeymoons, and we do a lot of different cuts that a lot of people have never heard of because they're from the old school. And we have folks who are gearing, as a lot of Americans age, they are two people households. Or you have the DC couple who are working on Capitol Hill, it's just the two of them. So we've learned to accommodate different folks depending on their customer base. So we will do as much or as little as you want. We add a la carte items, for lack of a better word. If you want your jowl smoked and you want your bacon sliced a certain way and you want it packaged a certain way, if you want your steaks one to a package, we will only charge you what our labor and our cost are, and that seems to have worked really well for us. So we have two different kinds of cut sheets, what we call a basic and a custom, for each species that we do. And we do beef, lamb, pork, goats.
That sounds great because that helps then it helps guide the customer. Now I will say I have never ever heard anyone compare Nordstrom's and meat processing, so that's new for me. That's good. You have talked
you guys out on the West Coast.
Right. We've talked a bit about staff. I was wondering if we should move on to labeling.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. You were doing this morning.
And actually, if you all look at that, that label is now not allowed.
Oh dear.
Yeah, that has recently come into play because bacon is only considered bacon when it's smoked and cured. And if it is fresh bacon, which we used to get a lot of folks because of the nitrate issue, which was coming up on the list this morning, the nitrates is a huge, huge topic. I think that might be something, Catherine, you all need to do down the road, is a nitrate thing, because I don't have enough time to go into that. But
you bet.
The USDA now does not consider celery salt, sea salt, some of the salt cures as an actual curing agent. So you got to be careful and speak to your inspector and your state laws and your laws that apply to you. So we had a lot of folks who said, we want bacon that's not cured. So we found out that bacon is only bacon if it's smoked and cured, so now it has to say fresh pork belly. If it's uncured, we can't call it bacon anymore. This particular picture actually is smoked bacon. Doug just told me that is the smoked bacon. I thought that was the fresh. I can't see, I'm too old. So, but the labeling issue is constantly changing.
Tell us what LSAS is.
That's the labeling standard application system. And I don't know how many of you are actual in the processing world, but you used to be able to fill out a form for anything other than a generic label. And a generic label is your basic stuff. New York strip, tenderloin, pork chops, those basic cuts that everybody's familiar with. And so if you want to say 100% grass-fed, if you want to say a breed like we raise Romney sheep or Angus beef, that's making a claim. So anytime that you make a claim, you have to provide supporting documents. Now, in this day and age, the point of sale purchases are very big. Everybody is trying to be the better farmer. Everybody is in it to make economic gains. So everybody can say, my pig is better than your pig. My beef is better than your beef. And this is why. So what we end up seeing is we have folks who want to say these are all Berkshire pigs. These are all Angus. These are all 100% grass-fed. They're natural. They are pure. They are acorn fed. You wouldn't believe the labels we get requested. So anything that, I just tell folks very simply, anything that's an adjective is a claim. It must be approved.
Do you, Lois, I know that in the past, some farmers try to do their own label claim approvals. Do you handle the label claim approvals for all the farmers that you process for?
Now, technically, the establishment is supposed to do the paperwork and supposed to get the federal approval, because ultimately we are responsible for your meat. We're the ones who are going to protect you, and the USDA is going to protect you. If something happens to that product, that's why that grant of inspection is on there. That says that it has gone through the USDA process and the HACCP process. So ultimately, anything that goes out of our plant, we technically are responsible for, and so is our inspection team. So the labeling approval has to go through us, because now they have a new system where you have to be approved through security. You have to put in an application. You have to go to the nearest, I want to say that's, it's not an extension, but it might be an extension office where you have to go and show your ID. You have to show your social security number, and you have to be approved before you can get into the labeling system. And it's for security. So not everybody can make their labels at home, print them out on their computer, kill their beef in the backyard, and slap it on the label and sell it. Believe it or not, a lot of people are doing that.
So in your slide here, you say, who is monitoring the farmers? Is that what you're referring to?
Nobody. Because there are people out there who are really telling the truth, and there are people out there who are getting box meat, having it relabeled, and there's nothing against the law about that. Mm-hmm. Your processor can order a thing of box meat in, put Catherine's farm on it, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Well, so
Yeah, shocking.
I think the regulators on the call, if there are any, would be worried about that. But so I think, and thanks, Asher, for what you've posted in the chat box about how you did it. I mean, Asher's saying that they were able to do that application themselves. So labeling is complicated. We've done webinars on that in the past, and we may need to revisit some of that. Let's move to and I'm sorry, for some reason, your son there has been cut off.
That's okay.
But if only you knew, what would you tell people? You've got 2 slides here. If only you knew, and then some advice for people thinking about doing this.
The impact on my family, for one. I am technically married to my business partner, and he's kind of my boss because he's the president. I'm working on that right now with a women's group, trying to get more shares. But we've been doing this for 25 years. So it's been a really long time, and it does work. It's not always easy, but it works. So really know who you're going into business with. Originally, we had 2 people who were interested in doing this with us. They wanted to be a part of it, but we kind of took them on as workers, but it never really materialized because they ended up not liking it. They didn't like the killing part. They didn't like the slaughter. They didn't like all of the rules and the regulations. So I think it's real important to know who you're going to be working with. It's also how much time are you willing to invest? Are you willing to be there 12 hours a day, 7 days a week? In the beginning, we were. And what is the impact on your family life? I mean, if you have a lot of outside hobbies and activities and you really want to do this, I would highly recommend rethinking it. Know what you're getting into, because ultimately you are responsible. If you have 5 people that call in sick that day, somebody is still needing their meat by Friday. You're the ones who still have to get in there and make sure things are done. If something goes wrong, if a power outage or a piece of equipment breaks down, it ultimately falls on your shoulders. It's not, sometimes being a business owner, I think, is overrated.
So when you say here, you got to think about the weather, we all got to think about the weather, right? So what particularly for a processor does it mean? You mean in terms of the number of animals you're going to have to process?
Correct. Like I said, normally we don't do any box meat. We don't order anything in. We do everything here. It walks in on its own. We harvest it, we process it, and if we sell it, it goes into our store or goes right out the door. Therefore, I don't know if any of you are from our area, but the East Coast was hammered this year. Absolutely hammered. And not to mention, the temperatures were so cold. That has an effect on animals that are being raised for slaughter. So if you have a drought, like I know a lot of us have been through, or you have a lot of weather, cold weather, it affects the animals that you are going to process to get them to weight, because the weight ultimately is going to determine how much your bill is and how much product you're going to get and be able to sell. So the weather was extremely devastating. We were down, like I said, 50%. People couldn't get here. We had so much snow, so much ice, that it just devastated us. Not to mention, a few years back, we had a hurricane come through. We were without power for 5 days. So when you're dealing with 80 head of beef, 50 head lamb, 20 pigs, that's a lot you're responsible for. I remember we had to call down in the valley to an ice company. We had to order 1,000 ice blocks.
Wow.
And we had to put them in our big dry aging room to keep it cold because our generators weren't able to keep it to temperature.
Oh my goodness. So speaking of weather, here's a nice picture of your sheep in weather.
This was just this winter.
Oh my goodness, yeah. More advice for those starting out, and then we have a whole bunch of questions that have been rolling in that we want to get to. So tell us about this.
Location, first of all, back in the day when we had our wild game business, we were there for 15 years. We were right there in the heart of D.C. Everything that you read about D.C., that's where we were, right outside. We had the Washington Redskins. We had FBI, CIA. We had a lot of affluent income. We had so much business, we had to turn it away. Come 60 miles west, you're in the Blue Ridge Mountains in the Shenandoah Valley. A lot of people do things themselves. They don't have a lot of that economic, the economic excess cash flow. And there are 6 other USDA fodder houses within a 100-mile radius between DC, Maryland, and Virginia. I have a lot of competition.
Wow.
Lot of competition. That is crucial. Now, my best friend lives in California in the breadbasket, and she used to have to drive 4 hours to get to a USDA facility. So I don't know, maybe Catherine, you can help me with this one. I don't know if we're unusual that we have this many compared to the rest of the U.S.
Yeah. You are unusual.
You are unusual.
And especially if you have that many that are managing financially.
Some are, some aren't.
Right.
And some have other niche markets. Like one of my biggest competitor, they buy as many pigs as they can find on the East Coast, and they make a sausage and they put them into grocery stores. And they have a small custom plant that they do a lot of custom work. And then they have a federal plant about 50 miles south of here. They've been in business a long time. They're family owned. They've been in business for probably over 60 years. So they have a really niche market because it's like what a lot of people around here say, it is what it is. That's where we've always gone.
Right.
Where we're more focused on local, the stuff that people are really looking for now, that younger generation that's coming up.
Well, so you've laid out, and we're going to move over to a bunch of
That's actually my kill floor, and that was one of our seminars.
Excellent. Excellent. Yeah. Do you usually have a nice tablecloth in your kill floor?
Actually, they were bleaching it. They were sanitizing it that day, and we just covered it up.
Very good. So one of the questions that came up was, given everything that you just described, are you profitable?
If you ask me right now, no. No.
Because of the bad weather. Have you, in general, been generally been profitable, and then you got hit really hard this year?
Yes. When we bought this place, it's when that mortgage disaster was happening in 2006 and 2007, and the economy took a huge hit. We were very profitable, I would say, from 2008 to 2011. Then we started getting a lot of opposition from inspection, from BDACs. And then they were starting to demand a lot of improvements physically on my building. So, and then you have vacuum bags, you have staff, which are hard to find, you have fuel prices, you have general everyday things that we talked about back in finances. So that's kind of where I'm kind of looking at it. Did I do this for the right reasons? Yes, yes. I've made a big difference. I really love doing stuff like this with the seminars. I do a lot of speaking. I do a lot of women's conferences at Virginia Tech. We do a lot of things to really teach. I think if I had to do it over again, I would have let my husband do more as a man. I think that's one of the things I missed. Catherine, I wish you would have reminded me of this one. Being a woman in a man's world, and I hate to say it, but it's true, I'm not looked at seriously, even though I know as much as a lot of my staff. I can do everything here in this plant, but kill and run the bandsaw. I can do everything. And sometimes when you see a woman, you're looked at as not being taken seriously. I've had people say, okay, thank you very much. Bye-bye, where's your husband? I've had an inspector tell me to put a sock in my mouth because I was asking questions. I have been called names. That's one of the things that I don't think anybody is ever going to tell you if you're a woman. So for all the women that are listening, make sure you know what you're doing, what you're getting into.
Be ready.
And make sure you find Catherine and this group. And you really find your resources of women in this industry, and I've tried to do some research. There's not a lot of us. There's a woman in Hawaii who owns a slaughterhouse. But as far as being a woman, make sure you have a really good, solid male partner. I know that sounds really sexist, and I'm sorry, but it is the truth. And I've seen it for way too long, and I just wanted to make sure I addressed that.
Thanks for addressing that. Absolutely. I know that NC Choices, our partner in North Carolina, does a regular Women in Meat conference. So one question that came in very specifically about the... Lois, are you there?
Oh. What?
Disconnected somehow.
Sorry, everyone. Lois, are you there? Folks, we seem to be having a technical difficulty. Give us a second. Hang in there with us. Catherine, maybe we need to
call back in, yeah.
It says I'm in mute. How am I in mute?
Oh, she's on mute. She has to undo her phone.
Are you guys there?
Yes, we're here.
Hello?
Are you here?
Lauren, maybe you and I can jump in on some of these questions while...
Nope, I can't hear you guys.
Oh, no. There was a good question. Kathy Webster, you had a question about looking at solar options to offset the electrical costs. And I think that's something that a couple of plants have looked at. I know particularly in California, there's been some interest in that. It seems that so far the technology just isn't quite cost effective yet from what I've heard from small scale plants. But definitely a good option in sunny areas, especially because, utilities are such a huge part of your operating costs. Let's see some of the others here.
Another question came up that was, how does the processing cost compare to the cost of feed to raise? Adam, you might clarify for us, do you mean that for a farmer who brings animals in to the plant, or do you mean for Lois specifically for their lamb? There was a suggestion here from Kathy Webster that folks who are asking about Grassfed could go to an organization like the American Grassfed Association. We put the labeling webinar archive up here. I know there have been some changes, and we'll look into doing some follow-up work on that. The nitrate, the curing question has been evolving, so we'll visit with the folks we know at FSIS and find out what the latest is based on what
Hi.
you said. Hi, are you back?
I'm back. I don't know what happened.
Well, that's all right. We're glad to have you back. So one of the questions, we were going through a few things. What kind of wages and fringe benefits do you pay your employees?
Well, that's a very good question. Doug and I are always the last ones to be paid. We have an admin person that averages $10 to $15 an hour. My main general manager has a lot of experience, so he's salaried yearly with 4 bonuses a year, paid vacation, sick days. I do a lot of things for my staff. I get them doctor visits. I get them massages because as a small business, we can't get everybody insurance. So we try to do well care whenever they need it. Mm-hmm. And we pay for it out of our pocket. It's better than paying a $3,000 to $5,000 premium.
There's a similar question here about, is it possible to subcontract with slaughter or processing staff, paying them by the piece instead of as an hourly employee? I have never seen it done that way. Have you? My husband had that same idea, and we wanted to do it, but the problem is, where are these people? Your younger generation, and I'm sorry, you saw my son's head cut off. He's 20. He wants nothing to do with this place. My youngest son is 12.
he wants to do this, but most of the younger generation, they're very social media oriented, they're very text minded, computer minded. Nobody wants to get dirty in blood and kill animals all day.
Right. So I see this is the same problem with finding staff.
Yes.
So we don't really know about this possibility, Travis, but if anyone else, we could post that to our list.
I think the thing is, if you can find that person who is good enough to put out the pieces,
Put them on staff.
without hurting themselves and doing a quality job, I'm all for it.
Yeah,
My husband's all about by the piece.
absolutely.
But, I mean, you got safety issues to consider. Knives, guns, big machines.
So here's another question. How do you manage biosecurity?
We don't let a lot of people in our plant unless they, like boots, they have to change clothes to come in. We have ramps in the back. We have a lot of things in place where the USDA mandates a lot of it.
Got it.
So that's kind of, I mean, do you want to be a little more specific about that? I mean, like general biosecurity, like it's not mandated yet, but I think it's coming down the pike.
Okay, well, if Brennan has additional questions, he could type them in. A question, do you do any delivery of products wholesale or delivery back to farms?
We do not do wholesale at all because we're dealing with customer animals and local only. So we don't do wholesale. The only thing that we could do, we do have a farmer who raises beef for us. We raise our own sheep. We do supply a restaurant with lamb sausage. Most of the time, if we were going to supply anybody, it would be whole animals or it would be beef burger, or smaller steaks. We're just so niche-y that we don't do that. We will work with certain customers if need be for an additional charge.
Okay. Okay. Do you have a specific software program that you use to track expenditures and income? What do you use? Do you use QuickBooks? Yeah.
Yep.
That's what we keep hearing from folks.
Yep. QuickBooks is easy. A lot of times too, and this is a little different that you might not find, Doug and I are always here. Doug and I are hands-on. One of us is always here at all times. And so a lot of times we know what's going out the door. We know what's coming in the door. We have people that we trust. Our two top people have been here for 10 and 11 years.
Oh, this is back to the biosecurity question, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, you know, we kind of know what's going in and out.
Mm-hmm. A question here about wastewater treatment from someone who's trying to get a new plant going in Georgia. Can you say anything about that with your plant?
I love Jekyll Island. I will come and open it and work there. Wherever it is in Georgia. I love Georgia. That is an issue. Now, right now we're dealing with State Department of Environmental Quality. We have a lagoon because we were grandfathered in because the plant was built in 1967. So the lagoon was grandfathered in, but we want to go alternative septic, which we will be implementing this fall.
Got it.
And I want to do more composting.
What kind of alternative septic are you thinking of?
What are we talking about, alternative septic? Drain field.
Drain field. Okay.
That's Doug's area. If somebody wants to ask Doug more questions, contact me and I'll let them talk to him. He handles all that.
Great. Question about what you do with hides and offal.
Actually, we are relaunching a brand new thing. I'm doing dog food with a lot of my offal. I used to be in the cosmetic industry. I wish I could make makeup because now I see where it comes from. But we have Valley Protein, which is takes care of all of that for us. We sell our hides to a furrier who pays us very well, and that's where our hides go. A lot of our sheep people want their pelts back. My staff is great at that. So we charge $5 extra to clean the pelts off, and then they come and pick them up, and we hand pull them.
Great. So it sounds like that's not a huge cost sink for you.
No,
You're
that's
doing
easy.
well on that side.
Yeah,
Good.
that's easy. And
Okay.
a lot of places too, before we were selling the hides, we would give our hides to Valley Protein, which is the offal facility with the rendering company. They would take it in exchange for picking up the offal.
That's a fairly standard thing, so that's
Yes.
good.
Yeah.
Other questions for Lois? I mean, I think at this point, Lois, one of the questions really is, you know, when a processing facility takes the kind of hit that you do in a year like this, you know, how can you keep moving? You've got significant overhead, you've got your staff, you've got your overall, you know, day-to-day operating costs, but then you've got these fixed costs that are really hard to be flexible with. So what kind of strategies can you have to hang in there, because the farmers eventually are going to have more animals to process and they need you to be there in the long term?
Right, and the kind of person that I am, I have a lot of integrity and a lot of passion. And I made a commitment. I made a commitment to my husband. I made a commitment to this area, to these farmers who come to us and trust us, saying, you know, you guys do the best we've ever had. We've been to everybody, and you do the best job. And I think I'm just that person. I don't give up. I don't fail. Failure's not an option. I'm tired. Is it nerve-wracking? Is it stressful? Yes. It's about to get better. I think with going 100% federal is probably the best thing we've ever done. And I see changes being implemented. I really see USDA helping us a great deal. And I feel like I also have a staff. They have families. So you cut back. You learn to cut back. You learn where you really need to spend less, focus more. And Doug is a really great partner for me. Sometimes I can get a little too excited. I get stuck with all this romanticism of why I do this. And sometimes I think I've learned that the way that I envision this, I can't always do what I want to do because of the rules and the regulations. So you really got to have a good multitasking vision. And you got to be ready for anything. And I will tell you this, 6 months ago, I was ready to sell it. I put it on the market, and I was ready to go out the door. It's still for sale for the right price, but only because I'm getting older. Only because I'm getting older.
Now, Lois, we pitched you as a successful small meat processor. Don't tell us you're selling.
Oh, no, but I'm just saying, you know, I'm going to be, I'm 48 years old, and, you know, I like Jekyll Island a lot, and I want to travel a little bit. It's not out of the question. I mean, I do love it. What else would I do? I've been doing this for so long. I don't know what else I'd do.
Right. Well, that's a great way to wrap up this hour with you, and we really appreciate you taking the time and telling us about your business, telling us about the challenges you've had, but some opportunities you've had. And it's a very challenging business, but I know that everybody who relies on you is grateful that you keep on going and that you have the kind of passion that you do. And
well, thank you all very much. The niche group is great. They're really
awesome.
Good.
Great. Well, so many thanks to Lois, many thanks to Doug and her whole team backing her up there. And thanks all of you for joining us today. Just a reminder that we have recorded this webinar and we will post it to our website and send that information out to our list. And if you aren't on our email list, then you can email us and we'll add you. Eventually, we have an opportunity to try to convert some of these webinars into videos we can post on our YouTube page. So once that's available, we will put that out there as well. That may make it easier for some folks. So again, thanks very much from the Niche Meat Processor Assistance Network, and we will see you next time. Catherine, when is our next webinar?
June 17th is our next webinar on humane handling at the processing plant. We're co-hosting with Animal Welfare Approved, and that'll be at 10 a.m. Pacific on June 17th.
So watch the listserv. You'll get all the information there. Thanks, everyone. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.